Welcome back, students. We'll be looking at section 4.5, terminology for solving systems of linear inequalities. It's been a little while since we have graphed linear inequalities, so I want to do a real quick review before we learn the new part that goes with it. So let's get started here. We have a linear inequality of 2x plus 3y is less than or equal to 6. So remember, the first thing we need to do is get it into our slope-intercept form so that we can actually graph it. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. I get 0 plus 3y is less than or equal to negative 2x plus 6. I'm going to rewrite that. I'm going to divide everything by that 3. And I get y is less than or equal to negative 2/3 x. 6 divided by 3 is 2. So remember, our slope is what is in front of that x. So our slope is negative 2/3. That negative 2 tells me my rise is going to go down. The 3 is positive, so I'm going to go to, my run is going to go to the right. Our b is that 2. So that is 0, 2 for that coordinate that we're going to use to plot our line. So start with your b. I'm going to go 0, 2. So our first coordinate is here. And then I use my slope to find my second one. So I'm going to go down 2 over 3. And I end up here with my second coordinate. Also, don't forget, when you have inequalities, here, let me put that in red. If you have less than or greater than, you have a dotted line. If you have less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, you have a solid line. So I'm going to join this with a solid since we have less than or equal to. Connect to my two coordinates here. The other thing is, remember, with inequalities, you always have shading. So always shade. So I'm going to switch to my highlighter. The first thing we need to do is figure out which side of the line we need to shade, actually. And remember, we pick a coordinate, and the one that was the simplest to kind of test was the origin, the 0, 0. So I'm going to plug that in to my equation, the 2x plus 3y is less than or equal to 6. Plug in those zeros for my variables and see if we do, in fact, end up with a true statement. So I have 0 plus 0, and 0 is less than or equal to 6. That is true. So that's a true statement. So that tells me my shading is going to be on the side with the coordinate that we used. So we're going to shade over here. Hopefully this is coming back to you as we're going through this. All right, let's do a second one again, just for a quick review. Get our y by itself. I get 0 plus 5y is greater than negative 3x plus 15. I'm going to rewrite that. Divide everything by 5. I get y is greater than negative 3/5 x. 15 divided by 5 is a 3. So I'm going to put plus 3. That's my equation. My slope is a negative 3/5, so I'm going to go down and over, and my b is 0, 3. So let's go ahead and plot that. So 0, 3 is right here. Use my slope, down 3 and over 5 to find my second one. My inequality is a greater than. It doesn't have the or equal to, so I'm going to have a dotted line, not a solid line. And then I'm going to use the coordinate 0, 0 to see where my shading goes. So 3x plus 5y is greater than 15. Plug in the zeros for my variables. 0 plus 0. Oops, I wrote 2 plus signs. And then 0 is greater than 15. Is 0 greater than 15? No, it's not. So that's not a true statement. So that tells me my shading is going to be on the other side of the line, the area that the coordinate is not in. Oop, I forgot to switch to my highlighter here. So we have that one shaded on this side. All right, now that we've had that quick review, let's talk about solving a system of linear inequalities. Step 1, make sure all equations are in slope-intercept form. Step 2, graph each linear inequality on the graph. Step 3, determine the shading for each line, but only shade the area where the shading overlaps for those two lines. So we're only going to keep the shading where it overlaps, okay? And I'm going to write up here real quick. Remember, slope-intercept form. Oh, I need to switch to my actual writing utensil here. Slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. We always need our equations in that form to graph. Example 1. You'll notice I have two equations. I have one here and I have one here. And then I have where I'm going to graph each of them individually. And then finally, I have where we're going to graph them together. So what I want to do is take you through this step by step so you can see what your final answer will look like. But you'll have multiple steps for you to follow when you do this on your own. So let me get rid of all those lines here. All right, so the first thing again was to isolate our y and get it into the y equals mx plus b form. So I'm going to do that here. So minus 3x. Actually, let's just go ahead and do that. Yeah, let's do that right there instead of in the box. So subtract 3x. I get 0 plus 2y is less than or equal to negative 3x plus 6. Rewrite this part. I'm going to divide everything by 2, divide everything by 2. I get y is less than or equal to negative 3 halves plus 3. So that's going to be my equation that I graph right here. Oops, I forgot my x plus 3. Let's go ahead and change our other one while we're doing this part. So minus 2x minus 2x. I get 0 minus 5y is greater than negative 2x plus 10. Rewrite that. Divide by a negative 5. Don't forget that when we divide or multiply by a negative number, we have to flip our inequality. So I'm going to flip that from greater than to less than. I end up with 2/5 x. 10 divided by a negative 5 becomes a minus 2. And now we have this for this particular equation here. So I'm going to write that. All right. So now we can actually graph both of these. So I'm going to do that real quick. So in our first one, our b is 0, 3. So I'm going to go up to 3. Our slope is a negative 3 halves. So I'm going to go down 3 over 2. Get my second coordinate right here. And my inequality tells me it's going to be a solid line. So do that. All right, let's graph our other one real quick. We'll come back and do the shading. I just want to get our lines down. So our other one, we start at 0, negative 2. We're going to go up 2 over 5 with our slope to get our next coordinate. This is a less than inequality, so it's going to be a dotted line. All right, now let's talk about our shading. We need to plug in our 0, 0 here. Since it's not being used for the line, I can use it. And I'm going to plug that into my original equation. So 3 times 0 plus 2 times 0 less than or equal to 6. 0 plus 0. 0 is less than or equal to 6. That is true. So that's the side that I'm going to have my shading. I'm going to use yellow again. So I'm going to shade this side. All right, now let's find the shading for our second one. Again, we're going to use the origin here. So I'm going to plug in the zeros for my variables. So I have 2 times 0 minus 5 times 0 is greater than 10. That becomes 0 minus 0. Is 0 greater than 10? No, it's not. So that tells me my shading is going to be on the other side. I'm going to use blue this time for my shading. So we have our shading right here for this one. All right, now what I want to do is I want to graph both of these lines together on this graph to show you how they interact together and what you'll actually, what your answer will actually look like, okay? So the first two is just me showing you them individually, how you had graphed them in chapter 3. But now we're going to take that information and learn the new part of how we put them together. So again, my top one was y, I need to switch to my actual writing utensil, is y is less than or equal to negative 3 halves x plus 3. So I'm going to go ahead and plot that again. We already know that these are our locations, and we know that it was a solid line. Okay. We also know that our shading was on this side. So I'm going to shade this side right here real quick. Okay. Now I'm going to plot my second one, which was y is less than 2/5 x minus 2. So go ahead and plot this one. Go up 2/5. So we were here. It was a dotted line. Oop, got a little off course there. And we know that our shading for it was over here. I want you to notice something right here. This is where both of our colors overlapped. So remember in the steps I told you the part where it overlaps is the only part that you include in your answer. That's what I'm talking about right here. So this particular area right here where the shading overlaps, that is the only area on this graph where they share solutions that will work for both equations. That's where their solution sets are. So when you put your answer on the computer, you need to only shade that area. So I'm going to remove this shading that we did previously because, like I said, when you enter your answer on the computer, you're not going to include this shading over here. You're only going to shade the area that they overlap. Redraw my line here. So that would be the area for your answer right in here, okay? All right, let's look at another one. Example 2. Let's go ahead and get them in the y equals mx plus b form, and then we'll work on graphing them. So I'm going to get y by itself by subtracting x here. I get 0 minus 2y is less than or equal to negative x plus 8. Rewrite that. I'm going to divide everything by that negative 2. I end up with y. I need to flip my inequality since I'm dividing by a negative number. So y is greater than or equal to 1/2 x. 8 divided by negative 2 gives us a minus 4. So we now have y is greater than or equal to 1/2 x minus 4. That's what we will be graphing. Let's go ahead and find the 0, 0, the ordered pair, and see what we end up with. 0 minus 2 times 0 is less than or equal to 8. 2 minus 0 is less than or equal to 8. 0 is less than or equal to 8. So yes, that is true. So when we get to our shading, we'll know where to shade. Let's do our other equation. Minus 3x minus 3x. That gives me 0 plus y is greater than negative 3x plus 6. I'm going to rewrite that. So this is our equation for this one right here. So I'm going to write that. Let's go ahead and figure out if we can use our origin here. So 3 times 0 plus 0 is greater than 6. That's 0 plus 0. Is 0 greater than 6? No, it's not. So we're not going to use that side of the line as our shading. It'll be the other side once we've plotted our line. So let's go ahead and write here, let's see, y is greater than or equal to 1/2 x, so that when we get to that, we already have it written. And then y is greater than negative 3x plus 6. All right, now we have all our pieces written. We can actually fill in our graph with our information. So this first one, I have my negative 4 is my b, so I'm going to go down to negative 4 on my y-axis, use my slope to find my second point. My slope is 1/2, so I'm going to go up 1 and run 2 to right here. My inequality has the or equal to, so that means I have a solid line through those two coordinates. When I checked the origin here, it told me that it was a true solution. So that tells me my shading is going to be on that side. So let's see, let me get my highlighter here. So I'm going to highlight this side. All right, let's go ahead and look at our other one. I have a plus 6 for my b, so I'm going to go all the way up here. And then I'm going to use my slope, which I'm going to put my slope over a 1, just so I have that fraction. I'm going to go down 3 over 1 to right here. And because it doesn't have the or equal to inequality, I'm going to end up with a dotted line. Again, this part is not new to you guys. This part, it should be familiar now that we've had a quick review. My shading, let's pick red this time for our shading. It told us that this was not a true statement right here. So our shading is actually going to be on the other side. It's not going to include the origin. Now let's plot both our lines together on this graph down here. Start with the first one. We had gone down to negative 4, up 1 over 2 for our second coordinate, and we had a solid line. Our second line was a plus 6. We went down 3 and over 1 for our second coordinate, and it was a dotted line. All right, so now what we need to do is figure out where they share shading. So if I was to look at my shading, let's see here, I have yellow here, right, for this line, for my solid line. And then I have shading right here for my dotted line. The area that they overlap is right here. So that is where your answer will be on the computer, okay? So I'm going to erase, actually, let's just hit undo. And then I'm going to put some yellow right here. And then I'm going to put some red over it. This is our answer location. That is the only place that you'll put shading on the computer. That is your solution area, because that's the only area that they both have shading. Example 3. Again, we're going to start with getting our y-intercept, our y equals mx plus b form, our slope-intercept form. So let's start there. I'm going to do this one in red. So minus x, I get 0 plus 2y is less than negative x plus 0. So that's 2y is less than negative x plus 0. I'm going to divide everything by 2 and end up with y is less than negative 1/2 x plus 0, because 0 divided by 2 is just 0. I'm going to keep that 0 there just because of the graphing part. We need it for our b. So I'm going to write that here. Y is less than negative 1/2 x plus 0. Let's go ahead and graph that one. So 0, oh, that's my origin. So I'm not going to be able to use that as my checking coordinate. I'm going to have to use a different one. But I'm going to go ahead and use my slope to find my second coordinate, down 1/2. This is going to be a dotted line because of our inequalities. So let's go ahead and do our dotted line. All right, now that we've done that one, I can tell that if I use 1, 1, that'll help me figure out which side to do my shading. So let's do that here. 1 plus 2 times 1 is less than 0. 1 plus 2 is less than 0. 3 is less than 0. That's not true. So that means our shading needs to go on the other side of our line. So let's do that. Let's do blue. So my shading is going to be over here. All right, let's look at our next equation. We have minus 3x minus 3x. I get 0 minus 4y is less than negative 3x plus 12. Negative 4y is less than negative 3x plus 12. I'm going to divide everything by negative 4. That is going to cancel out, so I get y. Now I divided by a negative number, so that tells me I'm going to flip my inequality. The negative 3 over negative 4 becomes a positive 3/4 x. And then 12 over negative 4 becomes a minus 3. So we now have that equation. Y is greater than 3/4 x minus 3. Let's go ahead and plot that one. So I'm going to go down to negative 3. Use my slope to find my next one. So I'm going to go up 3 and run 4 to here. This one is also a dotted line because of the inequality. I can actually use 0, 0 on this one because the line doesn't go through the origin. So let's do that. I have, let's see here, 3 times 0 minus 4 times 0 is less than 12. Scroll this up a little bit. 0 minus 0 less than 12. 0 is less than 12. That is true. So that means my shading is going to be on that side of the line. So let's make our highlighter yellow this time. I mean, excuse me, red this time. So our highlighting is over there. All right, let's rewrite our equations right here real quick and graph them and see how these lines interact together. Okay, so my first one, I had 0 and then down 1/2. It was a dotted line. My second one was down 3, up 3/4. It was also a dotted line. All right, so let's do the shading for our first one. We had shading right here in blue. Our second line had shading right here in red. So that tells me this area where it turns slightly purple, where they overlap, that is our solution area. That is the only location where they share coordinates. So let's erase these and let's put, I'm going to put green there just because I don't have a purple. So this is our shared area of solutions. So solution area is right there. All right. All right, last example. You'll notice this one has 3 equations, and it doesn't mean it's any harder. It just means we're going to have 3 lines instead of 2. We're going to have 3 areas of shading instead of 2, and we have to make sure the solution area basically has shading from all 3 lines. So the first thing we're going to do is just start with changing this first equation into the proper form. So minus 4x minus 4x. We get 0 minus 3y is less than or equal to negative 4x plus 8. I'm going to rewrite that. Now I'm going to divide everything by negative 3. When I do that, don't forget to change your inequality symbol to flip it, since we divide by a negative number. And we end up with 4/3 x minus 8/3. Okay, so that 8/3 becomes, for graphing purposes, just so we can graph it, becomes 2 and 2/3. 3 goes into 8 2 times. We have 2 left over. That's our new numerator. And then we, of course, keep the denominator. All right, let's go ahead and graph this one. So negative 2 and 2/3. All right, so I'm going to go down, and it's almost to the 3, but not quite. So we're right here. I'm going to use my slope to find the second one. I'm going to go up 4. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 right here. And then I need to go over 3. So our actual coordinate is right about here. Our inequality has the or equal to, so it's going to be a solid line. All right. I'm going to make these little spots show a little bit better. All right. So we've got that part, but we need to figure out which side of the shading we're going to do. So I'm going to come right over here. So we're going to use our origin. And I'm going to say 4 times 0 minus 3 times 0 is less than or equal to 8. 0 minus 0. 0 is less than or equal to 8. So that is the side that we will have our shading. So let's go ahead and put yellow here. All right, now let's look at our next equation. We have x is greater than or equal to 2. Remember, if you only have one variable, that means your line is either going to be horizontal or vertical, depending on which variable you have. We have the x variable. That means it's going to cross our our x axis at that number, at that 2. So that means we have a vertical line. So I'm going to go ahead and plot that vertical line at 2. So this is where it's going to cross our x-axis. It's a greater than or equal to, so it's going to be a solid line straight down. But we still need to figure out where our shading is going to go. I can still use the origin and plug in and say, well, is 0 greater than or equal to 2? No, it's not. So that tells me my shading is going to go on the other side. So I'm going to put blue shading over here. Now let's look at our third equation. We have y is less than or equal to 4. So again, we only have the y. So that tells me it's going to be a horizontal or a vertical. Well, because it's a y, we're going to cross our y-axis at that 4. That tells me it's going to be a horizontal line. So I'm going to put horizontal line here. And I'm going to go ahead and graph it over here. And it's going to be at the 4. It's less than or equal to, so it's a solid line through that coordinate. I'm going to use the origin to figure out where my shading goes. So if I say 0 is less than or equal to 4, that is true. So my shading is going to include that area. So I'm going to go ahead, I think I'll use red for my shading actually. I'm going to shade this area here. All right, now what we need to do is I'm going to write this part. Y is greater than or equal to 4/3 x minus 2 2/3. And then we have those there. We didn't have to change those. So I'm going to go ahead and plot this. So down here, and then we were roughly about here for this one. Go ahead and draw my straight line. Okay. Do my next one, which was the vertical line at 2. So it's right here. Change that to black. It was also a solid line. And then I had my horizontal line at 4. And it was also a solid line. All right, so let's fill in our shadings so we can see where they overlap. Our first shading was here. Our second shading was here. And our third shading was here. All right, so the only place that all three overlap, let's talk through that. Right here, I only have yellow and blue overlapping. Right here, I only have red and blue overlapping. And right here, I only have red and yellow overlapping. The only place that I have all three overlapping is this location right here in the middle. We have yellow, blue, and red in that location. So that is our solution area. So let's erase those. And I'm going to put in, let's just put green in there. So our green is going to be right in here. That is the only area that has the solutions for all three equations. So that's our solution area. All right, let's read our Bible verse. And all those who had believed were together and had all things in common. And they began selling their property and possessions and were sharing them with all, as anyone might have need. Acts 2:44 through 45. All right, guys, I hope you're having a great day. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.